on specific occasions that indelibly etch themselves into your recollections, despite fervent desires to forget. One such instance was that Friday night at the bar. It commenced as an ordinary evening, myself, her, along with our dearest companions, sharing jovial banter and beverages while embracing the pulsating energy of the city. The bar was teeming, bathed in subdued light, permeated with the aroma of whiskey, intermingling with the soft murmur of voices, occasionally punctuated by boisterous, inebriated laughter. The night should have been enjoyable, yet it transpired as the evening that reshaped everything. In hindsight, I should have anticipated it. Laura had exhibited a change in her demeanor, growing detached and testy over trivial matters. At first, I attributed it to pressures at work, family strife. Perhaps she simply required solitude, but then, incrementally, her disposition morphed. She ceased finding humor in my jokes. She stopped linking arms with me publicly. She began correcting me before others, always crafting the impression that I was the one lacking wit. That evening at the bar, she didn't attempt to conceal her disdain. Moments after I shared a trivial anecdote about getting lost during a road trip, everyone at our table erupted in laughter, except for Laura. She sat there, arms crossed, casting embarrassed glances my way. Unprovoked, she spoke disparagingly under her breath, audibly enough for all to hear, "You're such an idiot." The mirth dissipated swiftly. I felt the scrutiny of every gaze at the table shift towards me. The tension was palpable, like a physical blow. The most disheartening aspect, she wasn't intoxicated. This wasn't a slurred, haphazard faux pas. It was deliberate and harsh, striking harder than anticipated. I found myself at a loss for words, unsure of how to respond. All I could do was remain seated, stunned, as my ears grew hot with embarrassment, accompanied by an awkward silence that blanketed our table, until she reached out to touch my arm, her tone softening. "Relax," she said hastily. "I love you, nonetheless," were words meant to erase the recent events. I expected to simply forget what had transpired, but I couldn't, as for the first time in our relationship, I saw it the truth. Laura didn't value me. Perhaps she never did. In silence, I remained, unsure of why. Maybe I was trying to comprehend it, or maybe I was too ashamed to create a scene. However, one thing became apparent. The mood had changed. The evening was spoiled. Even my friends, who usually disregarded relationship issues, seemed uneasy. Daniel, among them, gave me a look, one that asked, "Aren't you going to address this?" I didn't respond, merely finishing my drink as Laura continued to act as if nothing had occurred. She laughed at others' jokes, checked her phone, and whispered into the ear of one of her male friends, causing him to chuckle. This was the moment I reached my limit. I abruptly rose from my chair, causing it to scrape the floor. I was leaving. Laura looked at me with a furrowed brow. "What?" I feigned a smile. "So apparently, I'm just a complete idiot, right?" Her expression fell. I saw remorse flit across her eyes, not because she truly felt sorry, but because I was reacting finally. "Sweetheart, I didn't mean it that way," she quickly replied, reaching for my hand. "Don't be so theatrical." I withdrew my hand. "No," I said flatly. "You meant precisely what you said." And with that, I departed, leaving her speechless. I returned home that night and lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment of our relationship in my mind. Suddenly, I saw it how she had subtly belittled me all along. How she made me feel insignificant, even in front of our friends. How she never really viewed me as a partner, but more like an accessory. Had I not noticed it before? Or perhaps I had. Perhaps I had chosen to overlook it. Currently, there was no escaping the truth. Laura held no regard for me, and I refused to be the one who endured this situation. The one who tolerated disrespect. The one who invested years with a woman who didn't appreciate me. No longer. On my couch, I fixated on my phone for an extended period. The remnants of the humiliation at the bar still lingered in my chest. Laura had publicly embarrassed me. However, it was not merely her derogatory words or calling me an idiot before my closest friends that wounded me the most. It was that she seemed oblivious to the issue. She believed she could simply say, "Calm down, I love you," and everything would return to normal. as if I were predictable in accepting her disrespect, as if I had grown accustomed to it and would just let it pass. I no longer felt angry. I was exhausted. I needed someone who would genuinely listen, so I did something I hadn't done for a while. I called my mother. The phone rang twice before she answered. "Michael," she expressed, taken aback. "It's late, dear. Everything all right?" I let out a long breath, rubbing my face. "I'm not sure, Mom," I confessed. There was a moment of silence, and then, in a way that only mothers can sense, she seemed to understand. "Tell me," she urged. After a deep swallow, I spoke up. "It's about Laura," I revealed at last. A longer pause followed, not one of surprise, but of understanding, as if she had anticipated this. "What transpired?" she asked tenderly. So I shared, divulging every detail. How Laura had been acting recently. How she diminished me in the presence of others, making me feel insignificant. By the time I finished, my mother was silent. Too silent. "Son," I questioned. She sighed softly. "Michael, I need to ask you a question," she said cautiously. "Has she consistently treated you this way?" I furrowed my brow. "No," I responded instinctively. But as the words left my mouth, doubt gnawed at me. Hadn't she? Hadn't there always been small, subtle digs and jabs? I had always dismissed their significance, telling myself they were insignificant. But now, reflecting upon it, I was no longer confident. "I've just been mulling it over," I stated, rubbing my temples. "All the things I did for her. Everything I gave up." My mother remained silent, giving me the floor. "I aided her when she possessed nothing," I bitingly remarked, and it was accurate. When Laura and I began dating, she was in a difficult position. She had recently lost her job. She had no savings. She barely managed to survive. And I took responsibility. I paid her rent for months. I purchased groceries when she lacked them. I even loaned her money when her vehicle broke down. Money that I knew I would never recover, and not once did I complain. Because I loved her. Because I believed we were a team. But now she had a good job. Now she had her own income. Now she no longer required my help. And suddenly, I was merely an idiot to her. "Mom," I regretfully stated. I confessed, my voice tense. "Regret what?" she asked gently. "Everything I did for her," I said. "All I offered, all I relinquished." The words left a sour taste in my mouth, for I had never regretted assisting another before. But Laura, she made me feel like a fool for continually thinking she valued me. "I should not have given her so much," I mumbled. My mother sighed and said, "Michael, listen to me. Helping someone isn't the issue. Loving them isn't the issue. The problem lies in giving everything to someone who gives nothing in return." I gritted my teeth. Yes, she used me, didn't she? Another moment of silence followed. Then softly, yes, this revelation struck me like a blow to the abdomen. For I already knew it was accurate. I simply needed to hear someone confirm it aloud. "What is the most painful aspect?" I inquired, shaking my head. "What, dear?" I gulped, looking at the ground. I hadn't anticipated her treating me this way, I confessed. Out of everyone, I had never anticipated it from her. That was the true heartache. Not the money, not the sacrifices, and certainly not the public embarrassment. Trust was betrayed. I thought Laura stood by my side, regardless of the circumstances, forming an unbreakable team. However, I now understood that I had been alone in our relationship for quite some time. "Michael," my mother asserted, "a woman who genuinely cares for you will never belittle or diminish you in front of others. She will not make you feel insignificant or regret your kindness towards her." I closed my eyes, and she whispered, "You deserve more. Always have." I took a deep breath, and for the first time, truly believed it. Laura was on the couch, seemingly unaffected by our recent events. She looked comfortable and carefree, as if nothing had transpired between us in front of our friends, or as if she hadn't disrespected me or belittled me while laughing with those who were meant to be my friends too. But I was fed up. This time, I didn't sneak in quietly, and I didn't pretend everything was normal. With determination, I strode in, my footsteps solid and unwavering. Laura looked up at me, her eyebrows furrowing slightly at my intense gaze. "What's up?" she asked offhandedly, subtly adjusting her position on the couch. I remained silent for a moment, considering my words carefully. This time, there would be no more opportunities to rectify things. "We need to discuss something," I stated calmly. She sighed, slightly rolling her eyes as she locked her phone and placed it on the coffee table. "What now, Michael?" she mumbled. I tightened my fists, feeling my patience dwindle. "Don't do that," I said coldly. She was taken aback by my tone. "Do what? Pretend I'm overreacting," I retorted sharply, as if the incident at the bar had no significance. She let out another sigh, this one dramatic, as if the discussion was already tiresome for her. "Good heavens, Michael, are you still angry about that?" I chuckled, but there was no mirth in it. "Are you serious at this moment?" I asked, shaking my head. "Laura, you called me an idiotic jerk in front of our companions, causing me embarrassment. Yet, when you noticed my reaction, you attempted to downplay it with a calm down, 'I love you.'" She folded her arms, looking at me with a hint of irritation. "It was a joke," she retorted. "You're the one overreacting. A joke. A joke." I scrutinized her face, seeking any trace of remorse or concern. However, I found none, no guilt, no shame, no remorse. And it was that very moment I understood. She didn't value me at all. Not a bit. "Have a question for you," I said, stepping nearer. Laura arched an eyebrow. "What? Would you ever speak to me like that if it were just us?" she sneered. "Michael, stop. Answer the question." She hesitated briefly, only for a moment, and that's all I required. "You wouldn't," I said softly. "You wouldn't address me like that in private. You wouldn't look me straight in the eye. Just us two, and talk to me like that. You acted that way because there were witnesses. You acted that way to boost your image, to appear powerful. You acted that way, Laura, because deep down, you don't value me. Your lips parted, but no words came out, because you knew I was correct." "That's not true," you finally replied, your tone defensive. I was intoxicated, Michael. I wasn't thinking," I retorted. "You weren't slurring your speech. You weren't unsteady. You weren't out of control. You knew what you were saying. And even if you were drunk, that doesn't justify it." You opened your mouth again, but hesitated. You were losing control of the discussion, and you knew it. "Let's dispense with the nonsense," I said, exhaling slowly. "What do you mean?" you inquired. I fixed my gaze on you for a long while before finally posing the question that had been lingering at the back of my mind for weeks. "Do you genuinely care for me, Laura?" You froze in response. Her lips slightly opened, as if to respond, but remained silent. The pause, the hesitation, spoke volumes. She eventually stuttered. "Respond." I pressed on. "At this moment, do you truly love me, or am I merely a convenience?" Her jaw clenched. "Naturally, I love you," she retorted. "Why would you ask such a question?" "Because your actions don't convey it at all," I responded icily. Laura exhaled sharply, shaking her head. "Michael, you're always so touchy," she mumbled. And there it was. The truth. It wasn't about the incident at the bar. It wasn't a single night. It was how she perceived me. She thought I was weak. She thought I was beneath her. She thought I was someone she could trample upon, and I just accepted it. And before I could fully comprehend this revelation, she continued talking. "I don't understand why you're acting like a victim," she added. "She wasn't a docile, submissive partner who idolizes you. If you can't handle me, perhaps it's best." She paused, but I anticipated where she was headed. Maybe I should depart. Perhaps I'm not enough for her. Perhaps she doesn't need me at all. Suddenly, I felt nothing, no sorrow, no rage, no eagerness to rectify this situation. I released a deep breath and stood tall. "All right," I replied simply. Her eyebrows furrowed. "All right, you don't respect me," I stated, "and I never have." She retorted, "You're being absurd." "No, I'm not," I interjected. "You undervalue me. You underappreciate me. And I deserve more than that." She chuckled, surprisingly. "You're leaving me because of a joke?" she sneered. I returned her gaze one last time. "No," I said. I'm leaving you because I finally understand who you truly are." With that, I exited the room and her life forever. Leaving Laura that night should have provided relief, as if the burden of our harmful relationship had been lifted. Yet, there was an unsettling feeling deep within me that persisted. A gnawing sensation in my core I couldn't shake despite my repeated assertions that I was done with her. Something didn't seem right, from her changed attitude towards me to her disrespectful behavior. It was as if she had been anticipating my departure and welcomed it. This led me to question, what if I wasn't the only one she was involved with? At first, I chalked it up to paranoia, searching for reasons to justify her mistreatment of me. But the more I pondered, the less plausible it became. Why had her affection waned? Why did we barely interact anymore? Why was she constantly preoccupied with her phone, smiling at messages that weren't meant for me? I needed answers, not to win her back or repair anything, but to understand why she had grown distant and indifferent. Since I decided to leave, I wanted to depart knowing all the facts. So, I began investigating. Laura was always cautious. She never posted anything suspicious or left obvious warning signs. Yet, that didn't guarantee her innocence. I delved into her old photos and comments. It was then that I spotted an anomaly. The name Ryan kept appearing. An unfamiliar man who had been liking her photos and making seemingly harmless comments. However, when I checked his page, what I discovered sent a chill down my spine. Ryan wasn't careful like Laura. He posted everything. And hidden among his random vacation pictures and gym selfies was a post that shattered the truth. A picture from 2 months ago, taken at a bar. In the background, Laura, sitting next to him, leaning dangerously close with a drink in her hand. The caption, "Late night drinks with the best company." My heart raced as I realized that 2 months ago she was with him. It was then that Laura noticeably distanced herself from me, reducing affectionate gestures, disregarding my needs, and treating me as if I held little significance. This wasn't a mere coincidence, it was a conscious decision. I desired more, so I delved deeper. Laura had overlooked the fact that her phone was still linked to our shared cloud storage. Upon examination, there were numerous deleted messages waiting for me. They hadn't vanished completely, they were still backed up. What I uncovered left my stomach in knots with fury. "Last night was fantastic, Ryan. Can't wait to see you again, sweetheart," one read. "Me too, Laura," another replied. However, caution was necessary as he had been acting suspiciously recently. "Ryan, you should break it off." "You don't need him," she suggested. "I know, but I have to do it at the right time," she responded. My teeth clenched, my grip tightening on my phone, realizing that she was stringing me along until it suited her convenience to end things. She had been having an affair for months while still allowing me to cover expenses. Remaining as the fool, I assumed our bond held genuine depth. Yet that night at the bar, she publicly humiliated me, calling me a moron. It wasn't merely disdain. It was her hidden emotions surfacing. She had mentally departed from our relationship already. She lacked the courage to inform me. Sitting there, clutching my phone tightly, I feared it might shatter. Every memory, every sacrifice, every instance where I stood by her seemed meaningless. For years, I'd been with a woman who didn't reciprocate respect. A woman who was secretly betraying me while I defended and trusted her, believing we were united. I felt nauseous. Nauseous about the love I'd harbored for her. Nauseous about my trust in her. Nauseous about my blindness. But then, that feeling transformed into something else. Raw, unadulterated rage. Because Laura didn't merely cheat, she exploited me. Now, she will experience the pain of losing everything. I won't shout. Instead, she'll feel the weight of loss. I wouldn't shed tears, nor would I plead for explanations. Laura had disclosed her identity to me. Now, I was determined to ensure she regretted every instant of what she inflicted upon me. I snatched my phone, scanned her contact, and dispatched a solitary message. "Return home. We must converse." She responded swiftly. Immediately. Yes, immediately. And then I stayed put, waiting. For when she entered that doorway, she would be unaware of the storm brewing for her. But by the time I was through, she'd never forget it. In the dimly lit living room, my phone screen cast a gentle light across my face as I scrolled through evidence of Laura's deceit. Every message, every lie, every instance where she secretly spent time with Ryan, laughing at my expense. I was no longer merely angry. I was resolute, for Laura believed she had the upper hand. She thought she could cheat, lie, and depart unscathed. She thought she could exploit me until she found a replacement. But now, initially, I intended to make her bitterly regret every moment. It wasn't enough to expose her. I planned to destroy her entire world. Laura relied heavily on me when we started, having no stable job, savings, or even a business plan. In contrast, I was the fool who helped her construct her life. I paid for her car repairs, covered half her rent, and gave money for a business idea she didn't implement. That ends now. I logged into our shared bank account, which we used for split bills, and transferred every cent I contributed to my personal account. Next, I contacted the bank to remove her access entirely. She wouldn't notice immediately, but when she attempts to use her car tomorrow, she'll understand how much she depends on me. And that was just the start. Laura presented a flawless persona to the world. She feigned loyalty, diligence, and self-reliance while claiming self-awareness of her solitary state. However, this was deceitful. It was I who had propelled her upward. I was ready to remove the support beneath her. I began with her family. Her parents had always favored me and held me in high regard, considering me beneficial for her. Thus, I sent screenshots of her confession messages to her mother. These included admissions of dishonesty, degrading comments about me, and plans to depart at an opportune moment. Almost immediately, a response arrived. Her mother, Michael, wrote, "I am deeply sorry. I was unaware she was doing this. I can't believe it. She had no idea what her true nature was. But now she does." As for Laura, she stood on the verge of losing the few who still cared about her. However, I wasn't finished yet. For Laura didn't only betray me, she embarrassed me before my peers. Ensured everyone recognized her true character, sending identical evidence in every communication and betrayal. I then waited patiently. Daniel, a close friend, was the first to respond. "Goodness gracious, mate, she's repulsive. We had no idea. You deserve better." Another message followed. "We're washing our hands of her. Don't fret. We've got your back." I watched as Laura's social circle disintegrated piece by piece, those she had endeared to, and those who had betrayed me. They were deserting her, and when she realized this, she would have no place left to hide. Finally, the decisive blow. I had one final task at hand. Handling Ryan was crucial because this wasn't merely about Laura. Ryan had been sleeping with her while we were together. Unbeknownst to his long-term girlfriend, it appeared. So I found her Instagram account and sent her all the proof. Each message, each screenshot, every secret they believed concealed it took only an hour for a response. Her, "Thank you for informing me. He's dead to me." With those words, Ryan lost everything: his girlfriend, his standing, and when Laura eventually tried to reach him, she found him as shattered as herself. The following morning, I was brewing coffee in the kitchen when I heard a sharp, frustrated scream from the bedroom, followed by angry footsteps heading my way. Laura appeared in the doorway, her face flushed with fury. "Michael, what in the world did you do?" she yelled. I took a sip of my coffee, maintaining my usual composure. "I have no idea what you're referring to," I replied calmly. Her hands were trembling. "My bank account is depleted. My parents won't speak to me. Everyone is turning against me." She moved closer, her eyes wide with dread. "Did you reveal something?" I suppressed a laugh, putting down my cup. "No, Laura," I said casually, leaning against the counter. "It was your own doing." Her lips quivered. "You wrecked my life," she bellowed. I smirked in response. "Not at all, dear," I replied. "You wrecked mine first. I merely made certain you experienced the same." She stood there, shuddering, suddenly comprehending that she had truly lost. She had nothing: no wealth, no family, no companions. And when she turned to flee to Ryan for solace, she'd find him as shattered as she was. As for me, I had finally broken free. I picked up my keys, cast one final glance at the woman who shattered my faith, and began toward the exit. "Where are you going?" she inquired sharply. I glanced back briefly, offering her a frosty, concluding smile. "Anywhere except with you." Then I left, never looking back. It had been several months since that decisive showdown, since I witnessed Laura's realm disintegrate bit by bit, since I parted ways from the woman who deceived me, ensuring she would never recover from her actions. I assumed perhaps over time I would feel remorse. I would have regretted the depth of my actions' impact on her. However, sitting in my fresh apartment, sipping coffee as dawn illuminated the cityscape beyond my window, I felt nothing but tranquility. It didn't take long for news to spread about Laura's downfall. Initially, it was shared by mutual acquaintances. Then, I overheard vague rumors on the internet. Eventually, she herself attempted contact. Yet, I remained unresponsive. This was because every fiber of my being had already moved forward. Laura, however, continued to dwell in the rubble of her errors. Her parents have not spoken to her since the day I exposed her secret. She has endeavored to call them, visit them, and apologize, but they refused any contact with her. Her father, a man who had once boasted about her good fortune in my presence, made it clear that she was no longer welcome in their lives. They perceived her actions as betraying their trust too deeply. They disregarded her justifications and found her pitiful apologies unacceptable. They considered her dead to them after I ceased all financial assistance. Subsequently, Laura was compelled to vacate the shared apartment we once inhabited. She lacked savings as a backup and had no financial security net. Her pursuit of a new residence on her own proved futile due to the tarnished reputation she had acquired. No one was willing to assist her. Her credit standing was abysmal, and her parents refused to co-sign a lease agreement. Her remaining friends grew tired of her persistent dramas. As a result, she found herself in a precarious situation fluctuating between staying on couches, temporary motel stays, and short-term accommodations. She felt too ashamed to disclose the struggles she was facing financially, as no one seemed to care enough to rescue her. The news of her actions spread like wildfire, and the public image she had painstakingly constructed portraying herself as a devoted, loving, self-reliant woman crumbled. Now, people murmured when she entered a room. Old acquaintances steered clear of her. No one wished to be connected with her anymore, for she was no longer the kind and loving girlfriend Laura, but a liar, a cheater, and a woman who discarded a decent man without cause. She had made her choices, and now she faced the consequences. Thinking she could return to him after I exposed her deceit, she believed he would console her, accept her, and they would be together without me as an obstacle. However, Ryan was in as much ruin as she was. His long-term girlfriend had left him immediately upon discovery, taking his home, finances, and entire social circle. The cruelest blow. Ryan wasn't loyal to Laura. He had other women, and she was merely another mistress to him. When she lost everything, when she pleaded for stability, he scoffed at her. "I never promised you anything, sweetheart. Not my fault you lost your support system." And as easily as that, he ended their relationship too. Without hesitation, she approached me again, a move I had foreseen. A brief message arrived. "Can we talk?" I pondered for a while whether to respond at all. Eventually, I did, typing merely 2 words. "No." Swiftly, I blocked her. She didn't merit my time, closure, or any energy spent on her. She had irretrievably lost me, and in that rejection, it was the most significant retribution I could deliver. I once believed I would take years to heal, that Laura had left such deep scars that trusting again would be impossible. But I was deceived. The moment I let go of her, the instant I saw she was merely a lesson learned, I found freedom. I redirected my attention towards myself, my career, my aspirations, and my happiness. I journeyed, encountered new faces, rebuilt my self-assurance, and moved on. One day I crossed paths with someone new, someone who gazed at me with compassion instead of arrogance, who opted for silence over mirth, who imbued me with a sense of worth that Laura never did. For the first time in years, I experienced it genuine love, the sort that dispenses with games, the sort that doesn't leave you doubting your value. And as for Laura, she turned into merely a name from my past. A woman who possessed everything her heart desired, and yet she discarded it all. Now she was naught but an insignificant figure. Meanwhile, I had found my true place at last.